I should have said no. That thought repeated in my head as I set my suitcase down in the grand foyer of my boss's house. The place smelled of polished wood and something faintly herbal, like eucalyptus and mint. I ran my palm over the smooth handle of my luggage, grounding myself, but it didn't do much to steady the unease in my chest. You okay? Nathan's voice cut through my thoughts, rich and familiar. I turned, finding him standing by the staircase with his usual easy smirk. Nathan Lockwood, my boss's younger brother. We weren't exactly friends, but we'd known each other long enough to develop a strange kind of rhythm. He had a habit of teasing, of lingering too close, of saying things that felt like they meant something else. It always unsettled me in a way I couldn't name. Yeah, I said, forcing a casual shrug. Just long day. He leaned against the banister, arms crossed over his chest. Right. You work too much. I huffed a laugh. That's rich coming from a Lockwood. Nathan's smirk deepened, but there was something unreadable in his gaze as he studied me. Well, you're stuck here for the weekend now. Might as well make the most of it. Right. Stuck. I hadn't planned on staying at my boss's house. This was supposed to be a quick business trip. Fly in, finalize some documents, and get out. But a storm had other plans. Flights were cancelled, and rather than book a hotel, my boss insisted I stay at his family's estate. He had flown out for another meeting, leaving me alone in a house too big for one person. Alone, except for Nathan. The weight of that fact settled in my stomach as he pushed off the banister and gestured toward the hallway. I set up a guest room for you, but honestly, most of the rooms here are haunted, so good luck. I rolled my eyes. Not falling for that. We'll see. I followed him down the hall, the polished floor reflecting the soft glow of the sconces on the walls. The house felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath, and maybe I was too. Nathan opened a door and stepped aside. Here you go. Try not to think about the ghost standing in the corner. I gave him a flat look, but he just grinned. Night. Workaholic, he murmured before disappearing down the hallway. The door clicked shut, leaving me alone with my racing thoughts. I exhaled and sat on the bed, running a hand through my hair. This was going to be an interesting weekend. Nathan Lockwood had always been a complication I didn't know how to deal with. I first met him 2 years ago at a company event, one of those stiff, formal gatherings where everyone smiled too much and drank overpriced champagne. He wasn't supposed to be there. My boss, Daniel Lockwood, had invited me over to discuss a project, but Nathan had shown up instead, lounging in the backyard like he owned the place. "You're Daniel's guy, right?" he had said, tipping his beer toward me in greeting. I remember nodding cautiously, unsure why he looked so amused. Right, the golden employee. Heard a lot about you. His words had made my stomach tighten in a way I hadn't expected. There was always something about Nathan, something unreadable, something sharp and effortless at the same time. He was the kind of person who could unsettle you with a single glance. Since then, we'd seen each other at a handful of company functions. We never talked much, just exchanged teasing remarks, little challenges hidden in our words. He had this way of making me feel like he saw something I didn't want to admit to. Now, stuck in his house for the weekend, that same feeling settled over me like an itch I couldn't scratch. I found him in the kitchen the next morning, barefoot and making coffee. The sight was oddly domestic, the soft morning light hitting the angles of his face, the loose way he stood as he stirred his mug. He looked up when I walked in, eyes still heavy with sleep. "Morning," he said, voice rougher than usual. I nodded, rubbing the back of my neck. "You always up this early?" He smirked. "No, but I figured you'd be. You seem like the type who can't sleep past 6 without feeling guilty about it." He wasn't wrong, but I refused to give him the satisfaction of confirming it. Instead, I sat at the kitchen island and watched as he slid a cup of coffee toward me. "You take it black, right?" I blinked. "How'd you know?" He leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Daniel talks about you more than you think." Something about that sent a flicker of warmth through my chest. I took a sip, using the cup as an excuse to look away. Nathan let the silence stretch before tilting his head. "So what's your deal?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" He tapped his fingers against his mug. "You're always so put together, focused. Feels like you don't let people see much beyond that." I hesitated, not sure how to answer. Nathan had this frustrating way of cutting through the surface, forcing you to actually think about what you were saying. "Maybe I just like keeping things simple," I said finally. He hummed, unconvinced. "Or maybe you're just scared of what happens when things get complicated." I opened my mouth to argue, but the way he was looking at me, like he was daring me to contradict him, made the words catch in my throat. Instead, I shook my head and muttered, "You think you know everything, don't you?" Nathan grinned. "Not everything, just enough to keep you on your toes." I should have been annoyed, but the truth was I liked the way he paid attention, and maybe that was the problem. The rain started in the afternoon, an unexpected downpour that turned the world outside into a blur of grey. I stood by the window, watching the water streak down the glass, listening to the soft patter against the rooftop. "Guess you're stuck here for a while," Nathan said from behind me, his voice carrying a hint of amusement. I turned to face him. He was leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, looking way too pleased with the situation. "I was supposed to head back this evening," I said, mostly to myself. Nathan shrugged. "Yeah, well, the roads are flooding. Daniel already called. He's not coming back until tomorrow." Something in my stomach tightened. The idea of being alone in this house with Nathan for the night was unsettling. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I didn't trust myself. Nathan walked past me, close enough that his shoulder nearly brushed mine. "You tense up too much," he muttered as he moved toward the living room. "Relax. It's just a storm. Just a storm." Right. I followed him, trying to act normal, trying to ignore the fact that my pulse had picked up a little. He flopped onto the couch, stretching out like he owned the place. "Guess that means we have to entertain ourselves," he mused. "Hope you're not a sore loser because I'm unbeatable at cards." I sat on the opposite end of the couch, trying to keep as much distance as possible. "You talk a lot of game for someone who hasn't seen me play." His grin was lazy, almost smug. "What, you secretly a poker champion?" I smirked. "Something like that." We played for a while, the sound of rain and the occasional crack of thunder filling the quiet spaces between our conversation. It was easy, light-hearted, until it wasn't. At some point, Nathan leaned closer, just slightly, just enough that I noticed the shift in the air between us. His eyes flicked up to mine, and for the first time since I'd met him, there was no teasing in his expression. "You ever wonder why Daniel hasn't mentioned you dating anyone?" he asked suddenly. I blinked. "What?" He tilted his head, studying me. "You're always so focused on work. No distractions, no personal drama. Makes me wonder." I swallowed. Maybe I just don't feel the need to talk about that kind of thing. Nathan hummed as if he didn't quite believe me. "Or maybe there's a reason you haven't let yourself get close to anyone." The weight of his gaze sent a shiver down my spine. I looked away, suddenly too aware of how close we were sitting now, of the way his knee brushed against mine. "I don't see why it matters," I muttered. Nathan leaned in slightly, his voice softer now. "Maybe it doesn't." A crack of thunder echoed outside, making the lights flicker. The power went out a second later, plunging the house into darkness. "Shit," I muttered. Nathan laughed, the sound warm and low. "Scared of the dark?" "No." But my voice came out quieter than I intended. There was a shift, the couch dipping slightly, and then his voice, right beside me now. "You okay?" I exhaled, trying to steady myself. "Yeah, just wasn't expecting." A flash of lightning illuminated the room for a split second, and in that moment I realized just how close he was. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, close enough that I could see the way his lips parted slightly, like he was about to say something but changed his mind. I should have moved. I should have put more space between us, but I didn't. Instead, I stayed perfectly still, my pulse hammering in my ears. Nathan's voice was quieter now, more careful. "You ever get tired of pretending?" My breath caught. Nathan, he didn't move away. He just watched me, waiting. The storm raged on outside. But inside it felt like everything had gone completely still. The silence between us stretched, heavy with words left unsaid. The storm outside roared on, rattling the windows, but it was nothing compared to the storm inside me. Nathan hadn't moved. His knee was still brushing mine, his face close enough that I could see every shift in his expression, the flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. He had asked me a question. One that I wasn't sure how to answer. You ever get tired of pretending? Yes, God, yes, but saying it out loud would change everything. I inhaled sharply and turned away, needing to put space between us before I did something reckless. We should... Nathan reached out, his fingers wrapping around my wrist. Not hard, not demanding, just there. Don't, he said, his voice softer now. Don't shut me out. I swallowed hard. Nathan, I know, he murmured, his grip loosening but not letting go. I know you're scared. I get it. I forced myself to look at him. You don't... I do. His thumb brushed against my skin absently, like he didn't even realize he was doing it. You think I don't see the way you look at me? My chest felt too tight, like I couldn't breathe properly. I don't... You do, he said simply. You always have. A part of me wanted to deny it, wanted to push him away, make a joke, pretend like none of this was happening. But another part of me, the part that had been aching for this for far too long, wanted to believe him. Nathan exhaled slowly, shaking his head. You drive me insane. You know that? I blinked. What? He let out a short laugh, but there was no humor in it. You act like I'm the reckless one, the one who doesn't think things through. But you're just as bad, maybe worse, I frowned. Nathan, you feel things, he said, voice quiet but intense. You feel everything, but you never let yourself have any of it. You keep it all locked up inside like you're scared of what happens if you let go. I looked away. I'm not. You are, he interrupted. And it's exhausting, isn't it? I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my emotions in check. You don't understand. Nathan huffed out a breath and suddenly moved, shifting so he was directly in front of me. His hands came up, tentative, but steady, resting lightly on either side of my face. I froze. I do understand, he said, softer this time, because I've been waiting for you to stop running from this for so long. My stomach twisted. Nathan, I'm not playing with you, he said firmly. This isn't a joke, this isn't me messing around. He was so close, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, close enough that I could see the way his throat bobbed as he swallowed. This thing between us, he murmured. It's real, you know it, you've always known it. My pulse thundered in my ears. I couldn't lie to him. Not now. I'm scared, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Nathan's expression softened and his thumb brushed against my cheek. I know. I closed my eyes, exhaling shakily. If we do this, everything changes. A beat of silence, then, good, he whispered. I opened my eyes and he was right there, his breath warm against my skin. I didn't know who moved first. Maybe it was him. Maybe it was me. But the next thing I knew, his lips were on mine. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was real. Nathan kissed me like he was proving a point, like he was trying to tell me something without words. His hands slid down to my shoulders, anchoring me to him, and I let myself sink into it, let myself feel it. The storm raged outside, but here, in the quiet of this moment, I felt something else entirely. I felt safe. I felt wanted. And for the first time in a long, long time, I let myself want it back. Nathan didn't pull away immediately. His hands stayed on my shoulders, his fingers curling slightly, as if he was afraid I'd slip through them. When he finally did break the kiss, it wasn't because he wanted to. It was because we needed to breathe. His forehead rested against mine, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. The world outside was still roaring, wind howling, rain hammering against the windows, but inside everything felt quiet, steady, real. I let out a shaky breath, my hands still gripping the front of his shirt, like it was the only thing keeping me tethered. Nathan chuckled softly, his voice low and rough. You okay? I wasn't sure how to answer that. My heart was still racing, my body still humming with the aftershock of what had just happened. I don't know, I admitted, because there was no point in lying now. Nathan pulled back slightly, just enough to look at me. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, those stupidly intense eyes, were filled with something warm, affection, relief, something that looked a hell of a lot like happiness. "I'm not going to push," he said after a beat, "but if you regret that—" "I don't," I cut in quickly, too quickly. Nathan's lips twitched. "No?" I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. "No." His fingers brushed against my jaw. A barely there touch, but enough to send a shiver down my spine. Good. A part of me still couldn't believe this was happening. That after everything, after the stolen glances, the quiet longing, the years of pretending, we were finally here. Was that supposed to be some kind of confession? I asked, attempting to regain some control of the situation. Nathan huffed out a laugh. "Pretty much, yeah," I swallowed. "And what happens now?" He tilted his head, considering. "That depends." "On?" His thumb brushed against my cheek again, slower this time. "On whether you're ready to stop pretending." I stared at him, my chest tight. This was real, this was happening, and the scariest part, I wanted it, I wanted him. I nodded slowly, feeling something inside me finally give way. "Yeah," I murmured. "I think I am." Nathan grinned, his fingers sliding to the nape of my neck. Finally. Before I could respond, he kissed me again, and this time I kissed him back without hesitation. The storm had settled into a steady rhythm outside, the rain a gentle percussion against the windows. The room was dim, the only light coming from the bedside lamp Nathan had switched on at some point, casting a soft glow over his face. He lay beside me, our shoulders touching as we shared the same pillow. It was strange, this new closeness, yet it felt right, natural even, like we had been circling this moment for so long that finally arriving here made more sense than anything else ever had. Nathan let out a slow breath, breaking the comfortable silence. "So, what happens now?" I turned my head to look at him, a small smile playing at my lips. "You tell me." His expression softened. "I meant what I said earlier. I don't want to pretend anymore." I felt a warmth spread through my chest at his words, but the rational part of me, the part that had spent years denying this, still whispered, "What if?" "What about your brother?" I asked hesitantly. Nathan's lips twitched. "You're worried about Ethan?" I sighed. "He's my boss. If he—" Nathan cut me off with a quiet chuckle. "Trust me, he already knows." I blinked. "What?" He gave me a knowing look. "Come on, everyone knows." "Well, everyone but you, apparently." I let out a short laugh, but it was tinged with disbelief. "You're joking." "I'm not," he said, his fingers absently tracing circles against the back of my hand. "You really think Ethan hasn't noticed the way I look at you, the way you look at me?" I swallowed, suddenly feeling exposed. Nathan shifted onto his side, propping his head up with his arm as he studied me. "He's my brother. He wants me to be happy." A pause. "And you make me happy." I stared at him, my heart knocking against my ribs. "Nathan, I'm serious," he murmured, his fingers tightening around mine. "I know this won't be easy, but I don't care. I've spent too long waiting for this, waiting for you, and I'm not letting go just because it's complicated." His words hit me like a slow, rolling tide, pulling me under in the best way possible. I exhaled shakily. "You really mean that?" Nathan smiled, his eyes warm. "Yeah, I do." For the first time in a long time, the fear that had always lingered in my chest began to fade. Maybe it would be complicated. Maybe there were things we'd have to figure out. But as I looked at Nathan the way he was looking at me, I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just a fleeting moment. This was the start of something real. And for the first time, I was ready to see where it would lead. Nathan squeezed my hand, a quiet promise lingering in his touch. I squeezed back. We'd figure it out. Together.